How do you think the media is involved in constructing like acceptance of gay and lesbian and gay LGBTIQ families in our logical, biological? How's the media involved in?
Well, I mean, when you use an expression like the media, there's not just one. Particularly not anymore. So the idea that there's one media that is crafting an idea of family, I think is erroneous, and particularly now where we're making our own media all the time. I've worked a lot in what is now known as the old media, and I guess, you know, the ancient old media still printed on dead trees.
Those ones that you can't read on a bus.
Yeah, and I guess the important thing, I don't know, like on one hand, there needs to be coverage of important issues, and obviously the same-sex marriage debate is getting a huge amount of press at the moment, and I think that's fantastic. But there are other really important issues that are almost completely ignored by kind of the old media and the new media, and some of these issues are really close to my heart, and they're how we get our hands on the bits of human tissue that are needed to reproduce if you want to do it in a way that isn't featured in those old Joy of Sex manuals from the 70s. So in Australia, the laws governing, it's called trafficking of human tissues, and basically we're talking access to sperm and access to eggs, and some of us need one or both of those things to have kids. And in Australia, there are really, really tight laws regulating access to sperm and egg donation. And this, I mean, in New South Wales, I think they're down to literally about 5 or 6 donors, male sperm donors, because of changes to the law about, you know, kids being able to contact.
And that was just tightened down last year. And you really didn't, was that correct? It was tightened right back to where you
like
couldn't.
it's being like you can't. It's really, I don't know how many of you have tried to get hold of any ovum lately, but it's really, really hard. You know, I do have very close friends that have managed to get hold of donor eggs, and it was really difficult. And perhaps, say, in the States, it's less difficult if you're fabulously wealthy. And in fact, there are some really wonderful websites where you can browse the owners of donor eggs and sperm to see. You can actually look at people in their baby photos to see who might, you know, make a good match with you and perhaps your existing family. It's very expensive overseas, but at least it's possible. In Australia, it's very hard to get hold of sperm and eggs unless you have private arrangements. And you know, for those of you who are thinking about reproducing and are only thinking about the emotional dimension, you know, will your relationship tolerate it? What are your maternity leave provisions and so on? There's then a whole other logistical dimension, which, you know, I think is really discriminatory. And when I tried to get access to IVF as a single woman, I was told, and I had a sperm donor arranged, and I was told that I wasn't able to access a lot of the Medicare assistance for IVF because I was socially infertile. If I was
what exactly does that mean? Single.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you're medically infertile, you know, you've had a series of, you know, I had my surgeon saying if you could just squeeze out one more miscarriage, you'd be medically infertile and you could kind of halve the cost of IVF. So, you know, just to move I mean, there's a lot of important discussion that needs to be had about same-sex marriage, but there's also a lot of discrimination that exists against, you know, what are still regarded as alternative family arrangements in terms of the logistics and nuts and bolts. So, I think the media, old and new, has ignored a lot of that. I've written about it. I continue to write about and talk about it, but I think it's something to bear in mind. It's certainly something I'd like to see the media give a lot more attention to.
Does it seem that sometimes we just grab a hold of one big thing, and everybody kind of rides that one subject? And there's a lot of things.
Same-sex marriage is easier to sell as a concept to
tissue.
To tissue, access to human tissue. It's a kind of there's an ickiness to it for some people, and it doesn't fit as well onto a bumper bar. Car to t-shirts and bumper bar slogans and stuff. But it couldn't be more important if you're actually thinking about starting a family and you're working with a biological disadvantage in some way. And I have a lot of friends for whom this is a great concern, because there are women who are availing themselves of the kind of one or two sperm donors that are left in Sydney, and there's a real concern that given that they're allowed to donate to 10 families, that there's a risk of it's a really narrow pool. And once again, this is a slightly icky subject, but for those of us who are interested in the logistics of reproducing outside of the joy of sex manual vision of reproduction, it's really important stuff.
Yeah, and it's not a huge country, Australia, population-wise. And so if you bring it down to that, in the United States, you're dealing with a lot more people.
Yeah, in the United States, there's an absolute smorgasbord of sperm and egg donation opportunities available, but it's hellishly expensive.
It is hellish. We've been looking a little bit.
And I have a lot of friends who are importing sperm because of the fact that they have more options.
And is that legal?
It depends.
It depends. Yeah. We'll leave that one there. Yeah.
But mostly.
Mostly, yeah.